Hi, Laura. Going to make you a co-host. Okay. Wait. Oops. Hello, Lisa. Hi. Okay, Laura, we don't have video on you yet.
Now, let's see. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good.
Lisa, do you want to be a co-host? That way,
I can.
if somebody, because I've got the waiting room going, and if I'm talking, someone else should let them in. So,
Sounds good. What do I do?
well, let's see what happens. I'm making you co-host.
Okay.
So then I think when the doorbell rings, I think it's only ringing on my computer, but you might still hear it. Then you just have to go, it'll give you a message, I think, to say somebody's here and admit or not admit.
Okay.
And then if somebody got crazy, I think it gives you the ability to remove them.
All right. I heard.
Somebody's here.
I just admitted them.
Oh, all right.
So I think that will work.
Oh, that's my sister.
Oh, good. Okay.
And her husband, Northern Bliss.
Hey, I was gonna say, what about Joey? Why isn't he joining us our Zoom?
Ah, I didn't even think to ask him. Or you mean our weekly meetings?
Our weekly writers group.
Yeah,
I mean,
thought
for
about
sure this too, you know, for sure. But
Yeah.
you know, we talked about that, and he said, well, you know, it's just too hard for me to drive in, but he wouldn't have to.
Oh
now.
yeah, if people wouldn't mind, he would love it. Hi, Lois, can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you now, and Gunter's here
Okay.
to behind me. Do you see us?
No, we don't.
No, we don't have your video. Did you start your video?
Yes, I'll check. Let me see. Do I not share screen?
Start
video. Here we go.
There you go. Yay!
Hey,
Yay! Good to see you.
good to see you.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Good.
Okay.
You'll have to sit down, Gunter, to be in the picture.
Yeah, how about
No, it's okay.
Okay.
moving your
No,
chair
I
over
don't need to
here?
be in the picture.
You don't want to be in the picture? Oh, he doesn't want to
I'm
be.
a
I guess.
silent witness.
Why don't you come over here? Move your chair over here.
Otherwise, yeah, we need to see. You need to see your lovely face. Yes.
Yeah. Good.
Okay.
You're looking great, Becky.
I think you guys might have met Laura, my publisher. She just left, but she'll be back. At my book intro meeting, she was there, so you probably met her.
Yes, I met her.
Okay. And then Lisa, I don't think you were there. Were you, Lisa, at my Silken Strands debut? I don't think you were in the country.
Maybe not. I think
Yeah,
I
so
was
this
there
is-
for Shattered Faith, though.
Okay, that was at the church, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So this is my sister and her husband, so Lois and Gunter, and this is Lisa. She's in my writers group.
Good to meet you.
Lisa was just doing some European travel. Where all did you get to?
We went to over 12 different countries. I think we spent probably our most time in England, and then we spent quite a bit of time in Italy as well as France and Germany and lots of other places.
Gunter is from Germany. So what parts of Germany did you get to?
Oh, really? So we were in Dusseldorf and then Frankfurt. And then we spent some time, which was really exciting, kind of in the eastern part by Chemnitz and Leipzig and Dresden.
Oh, we lost you, Lisa.
I know my
Yeah,
video
your
just,
video's going in and out, yeah.
my video goes in and out. It did that at writers group too. I don't know why.
Hmm.
I clicked to start it and then it just stops for some reason, but
Okay.
So when we were in Dresden a couple of years ago, they have, all I remember is like that really long ceramic thing that that ceramic wall that didn't get destroyed in the war. Did you see that?
yes,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, I forget what it's called.
I do too, but it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Germany. I mean, I took German in high school, so I know, like maybe 10 words, but when I see it written, I can
Was that from one year or
understand
four?
a lot more than I realize. That's exciting for me because I think, well, I don't know German at all, but then when somebody's speaking or I look at a menu, I think, oh, I do know some German. And then just seeing the scenery and everything is so clean and efficient and beautiful and ancient, and all of Europe is fantastic.
Did you get to Munich or not?
We didn't. We were looking at going to Munich before the coronavirus hit. So that was on our list of places to stop, and then we got a really good deal on a flight to Berlin, and so we thought, well, maybe we'll go to Berlin instead. But there was a little bit of wiggle room in between a couple trips, and I thought, oh, I think we'll still get to Munich, but it didn't. It wasn't to be.
Oh, too bad. Yeah. Oh,
here's
somebody's
Chris.
here.
I'll admit him.
It looks like we can all admit him.
Okay, just you guys. I made co-hosts, Laura, you and.
Oh, okay, I didn't realize that.
Okay, so here's Chris. He's from our writers group too. So it might just be a writers group
Hey, Chris.
get
How are you?
together here. Hi, Chris.
But you know what? It's a good trial run, even if
Yeah.
it's just because I've never run a book club before, and I'm supposed to know what I'm doing and stuff. So I did a trial run, and like I said in the email I just sent you. What? Hey,
Oh, Connie. I didn't think she was going to come. That's
who's
my
Connie?
friend. My friend.
Oh,
Connie, I didn't think you were going to come.
Changed my mind.
Oh, thank you. That was nice. So Lois and Gunter are here. You guys have met Connie before, my friend.
Mhm.
Yeah. Hi, Connie.
Hi.
Hi.
And then we have Lisa and Chris are from my writers group. And Laura's my publisher, who I think you've met.
We've
I've
met
met Laura. We're going to go to Scotland sometime.
when the borders are open and the planes are flying again, right?
Well, when we're allowed to leave our homes.
Yeah, in another reality.
First things first.
Yeah.
So Lois and Gunter just escaped California and got to their Wisconsin home about a week ago.
Mm.
Good for
Yeah,
you.
this is a week and a day now. Well,
Was it a
In
pretty
California?
yeah, in San Diego.
San Diego, way south.
Yeah, way south. So we had not really had any cases in San Diego that we knew of or anyone around us knew of. But we figured it was time to come to our lake home, Northern Bliss in Wisconsin early this year. So
Good for you.
I think that was a good choice.
mhm.
Yeah. Hi,
So
Lynn.
we have Linda with us. We don't see you though, Linda.
Hello, Becky. I'm going to be making dinner, so I'm just kind of moving around the kitchen.
You're not going to let
Sorry.
us see what you're making? That's no fair.
I'll tell you.
Yeah, you can tell us. What are you making?
It is spaghetti with zoodles or zucchini
Oh.
spirals.
Oh,
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful, not homemade, but it's Trader Joe's Autumn Harvest sauce, which I love because it has pumpkin and butternut
Yeah.
squash. And
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
it's my
Oh,
soul
that
food, my
sounds
soul
good.
sauce.
Yeah,
I
good.
almost bought spaghetti squash the other day. Have you ever had that?
Mhm.
It is the
Mhm.
coolest thing. Somebody gave me one and I had never heard of it. And I think
Yeah.
I asked a friend, he said mix it up with like olive oil and butter or something. It was so good. I
Mhm.
could eat it forever.
What was it made from? You said butternut squash?
Spaghetti squash. It's the weirdest thing. It's this
Spaghetti squash.
spaghetti
Yeah.
squash. Cut it open
Yes.
and it looks like spaghetti. It's
It's got noodles
Yes.
inside.
It is. It's
It's
well, yeah,
wonderful.
scrape it out with a fork,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah. Well, Linda, I haven't talked to you for a long time, but just to let you know, some of the people here, Lisa and Laura's my publisher, and Lisa and Chris are part of my writers group. And
Oh,
the
nice.
Northern Bliss folks here are Gunter and Lois. Lois is my sister and her husband. And then you know Connie, Linda Johnson. You guys were at Light at the
Is
same time. I
Lauren's
think.
mom?
Yeah,
Yes.
Lauren's mom.
I'm just looking at the participants list now. Yes.
Oh, Linda, I think about you and pray for you so often.
Thank
I would-
you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, I'd like to get caught up again.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. Did you get a chance to read my book, Linda?
No, I didn't.
That's okay.
But you know
Thanks
what?
for-
I thought
Thanks for tuning in anyway.
that's what I'm hoping. It'll put one more thing on my list to get done.
Yeah. There you
It's
go.
a fast read. It doesn't take very long, and it pulls you through, so you can get it done. For me, I got it done in a few hours because it was like, I can't
Oh,
quit.
Yeah. I think it's only like a 3-hour read, so it's not real complicated. Yeah.
I'm kind of in the midst of some vision issues, and of
Oh.
course, my neurological ophthalmologist is told by the state of Minnesota that they're not deemed medically necessary, and so it's kind of a pain. So I'm kind of doing what I need to do for my vision stuff, and then just kind of doing some of my
Yeah.
other things, putting them on my to-do list afterwards. So
Yeah. Well, I hope you get through that. Okay.
it will be fine, I'm sure.
Okay. Good. Well,
It
Laura.
seems like everybody here knows you, Becky, so
Yeah, that makes it a little easier.
you send me 100-word bio, but I didn't get it, so everybody here knows.
I did send it, but only a couple of
You
hours
did?
ago.
Oh, somehow I missed that. I didn't see that.
Okay.
So I will read the introduction of Shattered Faith. It actually started off as a short story, right?
Yeah, it did.
And it was much shorter. So it won first place in the American Christian Fiction Writers First Impressions Contest in 2017 in the novella category. And Shattered Faith was one of 3 novellas nominated by the ACFW, which is the American Christian Fiction Writers, for the prestigious Genesis Award in 2018. So do you want to say anything about what the Genesis Award is?
So the American Christian Fiction Writers Association, they're like the biggest group of, what they are, Christian fiction writers.
Yeah.
And their biggest award that they give to a brand new
Yeah, I'm good. I was just
novel, but it
flipping.
doesn't have to be unpublished novel, is the Genesis Award.
Okay.
So they have different categories, and there are usually 3 nominees per category, and then there's a big gala banquet, which I went to in Nashville. And they don't tell you if you're going to win or not, so it's like the Academy Awards. So I was like sitting there shaking in my seat, but I didn't get called up. I was not the winner. But
one of only 3 is pretty impressive.
yeah,
So my daughter's in
I
Nashville.
felt honored. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll have to submit a novella so I can go there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so the Genesis Award is, they have all kinds of categories. I think they have about 6 or 7, like they have historical fiction and contemporary, and I don't know if they have thriller, mystery, I think. So then they have like 3 nominees in each category.
Okay. Yeah, that was the first year you entered, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so give us sort of a quick summary I think, has everybody here read the book except Linda?
I've read it, but you
I
haven't.
didn't.
But he didn't read it.
Okay, so that's fine. And I think as we go through our weekly meetings, it'll be okay if some people haven't read the book, maybe it'll be sort of an introduction to them. So give us a brief synopsis of what the book is about and then what inspired it for you.
Yeah, okay.
What you to
So
write.
it's about Faith, who her daughter has these visions. So it starts out at a slumber party, and her daughter says she's seeing coyotes outside, and then all the girls at the slumber party insist that they saw these coyotes, but not just coyotes, but they're standing on their hind legs and begging like a dog, right? And so she's like, that's just impossible. What are you talking about? But then she gets a call from her banker saying that her bank account was hacked. This is like the very next day by people in Kazakhstan. And so she's coyotes stand, Kazakhstan. She's like, something is super weird here. And so she starts trying to figure out how her daughter could have seen this vision that turned out to be true in a very bizarre way. So then as she follows these leads, then her daughter has another vision, and it leads her to some pretty strong evidence that her husband is having an affair. And he he's away at a convention, and so she can't confront him. So she's got a weekend before he gets back from his convention to confront him. And meanwhile, she wants to figure out as much as she can about what's going on, so she knows what to confront him with. So then the book is about her kind of taking this weekend to try to investigate her husband, what he's up to. And along the way, she finds out a lot of things in her own life that she needs to deal with. And God is kind of speaking to her through different of her friends that she runs into in different situations that happen over this weekend. And then it actually has a pretty good ending, a better ending than you think the whole way through. So even though it deals with some kind of heavy or darker maybe kind of themes, it all gets resolved pretty nicely at the end. And the reason, so two things inspired it. First of all, was a real slumber party that my daughter had when she was like 10. And yes, all these girls in the middle of the night screaming. I come down, there's coyotes all around the house. I'm like, no, there aren't coyotes all around the house. Coyotes don't do that. And then, so I get them all come down and I go back upstairs, and then they're screaming again. And they're like, they were right at the front door. I'm like, no, they weren't. But, but literally that very next afternoon, my banker called and said, yeah, your account's been hacked by by people in Kazakhstan, and we shut all your accounts down. I'm like, oh. I'm like, God, is that what you were trying to tell me by these strange visions that all the slumber girl kids had?
So there were a couple visions in the book. Were any of the others ones that you actually had, or based on ones that you actually?
No, they weren't. That was just kind of a springboard. But I have had.
Well, it was a great springboard.
I have had little things that have happened to me a lot, and that was one of the motivations I had for the book. Like something really bizarre, like unusual happens, and then you get like something else happens, and you make the connection. You're like, oh, maybe God was trying to give me a warning or set me up for this thing that eventually happened. So, and I know, Laura, that's happened to you too. I haven't met a lot of people who relate to me on that, but we've talked about some of those things.
We kind of, you recommended the book, If This Were a Dream, What Would It Mean? And yeah, I've had some of those experiences, and I think that's part of why I like your book so much, because I wonder how many more people have had such experiences but don't want to say it.
Yeah, because it just sounds too kooky and too weird.
So to me, it didn't. To me, it sounded ordinary. But then, as you say, you know, I've had some interesting experiences too. So I don't know. Does anyone else want to volunteer? Anyone else had such experiences?
I agree. I think that there are times in your life where things happen, or you feel God speaking to you in a way that is unusual. And for whatever reason, I think it's difficult to talk about because you do think that maybe people will think you're crazy, or yeah, that you're just kind of out there. And it's really a shame. It's really a shame that we don't speak more about those things.
Yeah, because why wouldn't God speak to us through these little things? You know, he can certainly choose a lot of different ways to communicate with us. And, you know, and maybe that works. He knows how to best to communicate with each person, right? And so if those kind of pictures and symbols speak to you, then I think God will use those. And I'm kind of a symbol person. And so I do think that he speaks to me that way.
And just as a side note, you're an author, and this is what authors do all the time. You drop these foreshadowings and symbols.
Well, absolutely, right?
That's what God would do to you. He's like, readers, I'll do it to you.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking the same language. Yeah.
Throughout the book, what I was really, I struggled with, and that is that all the evidence pointed to her husband having this affair. And she had this friend that was continually saying, you know, keep looking at it. And it made me angry. I was like, she needs to like confront him and talk to him and quit giving him the benefit of the doubt, make him explain. How did that come about for you?
Well, I knew, of course, I knew what was really going on with Katrina, who was kind of messing up the works there, right? So Lance looks to be a lot worse than he is, although he definitely has had some issues, right?
Well, he wasn't totally innocent.
No, he wasn't totally innocent, but he wasn't as bad as it could have been either. So I kind of wanted to leave that have some character that was leaving that hint open so that it didn't come as a total surprise for the reader when we see what Katrina has been up to. So that's so I had to deal with that, and I realized that some people were, well, you guys in the writers group, when you heard me read it, you're like, that's too unrealistic. You know, she would just call him up immediately and say, fess up. What's going on?
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, right. When she wasn't sure. But you know what I like about that aspect of it is that sometimes there is room for misjudging, and sometimes exactly what happened does happen, where he's kind of sort of drawn in and then he doesn't. You know, I mean, that does happen. So to me, that was realistic, that it turned out there was a lot of smoke, but at the last minute, he didn't.
Yeah.
Knowing that it still came out.
I think, though, that what tipped me off was Jen, the friend Jen, because everything that she told her that she thought was like a clue or a reason why he might have been unfaithful, Jen would discount right away and say, no, it could have been this, or that doesn't prove it. So you always were left with that feeling of doubt throughout the novel. Was Jen right, maybe? And that the heroine, in this case, the main character, was wrong. So you always sort of had that to think about.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to see how people think about Jen, if she was a good friend, if she gave good advice, or if she wasn't, because she's the one who told her, don't confront him over the phone, wait till he gets back home.
I think
You
that
know,
was
I
definitely
didn't care for
wise.
Jen.
Down with Jen.
You are with Jen?
Yeah.
No, I
Oh,
said
down with Jen.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, I didn't care for her.
No, I thought her advice not to confront him over the phone was very good advice, because I think if you're going to deal with a situation that serious, you need to be face to face. You need to see the expression. You need to see the reaction.
Exactly.
It's easier to lie over the phone, I think, because you're not getting all the clues. And once you tell someone, I think you're having an affair, let's face it, there were two options. Either he was or he wasn't. And if it was over the phone, it's way too easy to go, oh, no, honey, you're stressed out, you know? We'll talk about it when I get home. And now he's got like 48 hours to the story.
Yeah.
So, you know, the unfortunate fact is she did have enough clues to make it reasonable to think, and in fact, he almost did have an affair. So I do think that Jen's advice to only talk to him in person was very good advice. I think her advice to, you know, take some time to look through, sift through all the facts, I think that was very good advice too, because once again, either he's having an affair or he isn't. And if he isn't, and you take some time and look at the facts, maybe you get a clearer picture, as she did, kind of, sort of, and is having an affair and you take time to look through the facts. Well, you know, he's still coming home on Monday and he's still stuck with you.
Yeah.
So anyone else, who else thought Jen's advice was good or not good?
Well, I always thought when he was first kind of building up her case that it was all a little bit, she was jumping a little bit quick to conclusions, finding hairs in sheets and finding different colored sheets and things like that. There were so many ways you could answer these things that it always struck me that for somebody who was supposedly happily married to jump straight to the unfaithfulness answer was a rather quick conclusion. It was a very short road down that conclusion, but there you go. I guess it depends on the way the marriage was in the first place, but that was my first kind of feeling about it.
I don't
but,
know,
you know, we only have
if
short
I found a
stories, so-
black hair in my bed. Yeah.
I suppose so, in different sheets and all the rest of it.
You have to
But I mean,
ask.
it's just my feeling is if you're going to do anything like that, how would you be so stupid?
Yeah,
Like,
that's true
it's
too.
bleeding obvious. I mean, goodness gracious me. There are so many other ways to be unfaithful, and that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. I mean,
But
good
if
grief.
You're
gonna
having
do something
you're in
like
the
that,
hay
why would
with
you
a
do it
hot
that way?
woman.
I mean,
What's-
surely, this is an intelligent man, isn't it? It's not an idiot. So, I mean, surely not.
Apparently he is, though.
Discuss.
There was there.
I mean, who are we dealing with here?
Well, I don't know. But we now know this about Chris. If he has an affair, he's going to make
Exactly. I'm going to be
He's
smart
gonna
about
be
it. I'll
smart
just tell you
about
that.
it.
he's got his priorities straight.
I'll make sure I dye my hair for one thing.
There
That's the
you
first thing I'm
go.
going to do. We'll shave it off.
Whoever you have the affair with has very short hair, so it can be improved for you.
Something like that, yeah.
So, any other comments on Jen? Who else liked Jen?
I didn't mind her. I
Yeah.
thought she was the voice of reason, actually, but
I thought she was kind of the voice of reason too.
yeah.
So then, do you think, would most women in Faith's situation confront their husband about their suspicions over the phone, or would they wait to do it in person?
I think most.
For me, I felt like it wasn't so much confronting right away over the phone, but it was involving a lot of other people into the investigation before talking to him first. I feel like for me, I would wait till my husband got home and say, what the hell? And, you know, really pin it down then. And if I wasn't satisfied after that conversation, maybe then involve the people. But involving a lot of friends and family, it can taint a person's impression, you know, without cause.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have an answer for that, but that's a good point. So really the only people she did talk to were people who had already hinted, because after the first Coyotes vision, she talked to a lot of people about that without bringing Lance into it, and every one of them brought up Lance out of the blue, okay? And like they were trying to tell her something, right? So that's why she went back to those specific people, but like she didn't contact her mom or her sister because they're like, well,
That's
they
true.
love Lance like crazy. I don't want to, warp their opinion of him. So that was kind of the reason why she chose those people to go back to.
So I have a question then. I'm interested in everybody's opinion. What do you think she would have done had she not involved these people? What if she had not talked to Jen? What if Jen had not said, slow down, think of all the alternate explanations? What might have happened? Let's start with Lisa. Jen.
I think I think likely she would have been a wreck. I think she would have stayed at home. I think she would have been thinking over and over things again. I think she would have been scouring the house looking for more clues. She probably would have been crying a lot. It would have been really an agonizing weekend for her.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it would have turned out better or worse with Lance had she not had someone to bounce these ideas off of?
You know what? I don't know. It depends. I mean, certainly having somebody try to, having Jen kind of explain away a lot of the things was helpful. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, it depends on how she kind of worked through it in her own mind and went through at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Well, I think if you counted the number of people, the only careful and maybe reasonable advice that she got that maybe Lance wasn't guilty of this was Jen. And then all of the others went the other way. So by contacting so many people, I think it actually confirmed her suspicions. She only had one friend who was saying, listen, maybe all of this doesn't point to him having an affair.
So Beck.
Laura's forum.
Laura's frozen.
Did I freeze?
Can you give us a
You're
recap?
frozen, Laura.
While
Oh, there you
Jen,
go.
what was her dog?
Yeah,
I froze?
yeah, you're back.
Oh, sorry. I didn't think I froze at all. Who did she talk to? Colette, Jen, her doctor? What was her doctor's name?
Gretchen.
Gretchen. And then was there anyone else or was it just those three?
Colette,
Her
Gretchen,
mother-in-law.
the mother-in-law, Wanda.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 4 people in a weekend. Seems a lot, really, before you would talk to him directly. I mean, not including Jen, so there were 5, I think.
Yeah. Wait, who are we missing? Colette, Jen, Gretchen, Wanda. I think that's just 4, right?
Right, okay.
Black
Yeah.
Gretchen, Gem Wonder, yeah.
Mhm.
And the cat.
And the cat. The mysterious blue-eyed black cat.
A few coyotes.
The coyotes.
So how do you see the whole loss of the child playing into this? Open question for anyone.
Hmm.
Do you think that Gretchen was right, that there is a greater likelihood or that there's an equal likelihood they'll either divorce or grow closer? Or do you think one is more likely?
Well, that's interesting. I have no idea what the statistics are, but I've read a lot of stories where there is a problem in the marriage after the loss of a child.
Mm-hmm.
So that might have entered into this, at least into her suspicions.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I liked about this book was that it didn't just put everything in black and white. Oh, Lance is bad and evil for even thinking about it. I felt like, you know, as much as we can say he was wrong to even let it get as far as it did, you could at least kind of see that he was hurting too. And I like that aspect. You know, I don't care for books where everything is just black and white, one person's good and one person's bad, because I think that's not really true to human nature. And it doesn't help us grow as people. You know, when we just look at someone and go, you're bad and I'm good. Part of how we grow is to go, okay, I can see that you were hurting too. And understand somebody else, even if what they did was wrong. So, but I'm curious, Becky, do you know the statistics on how many?
Yeah, so the little story that Faith tells about going to the support group that did her more harm than good, that's actually autobiographical, because after I lost a child, my husband and I, well, did he go with me? I can't even remember. I think I probably went by myself to this support group, and it was exactly what I describe in the book. So they just wanted to keep grieving. They didn't want to have anybody tell them how to heal. They were just like, and they were the ones that said husbands and wives are more likely to divorce after the loss of a child. And
You ever look into that statistic?
yeah, well, I looked into it when I was writing this book, and then that's when I found it's saying that it's just as likely either way.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
so a lot of spouses grow closer because of that, and many do divorce after the loss of a child.
But if it goes either way, then it seems to me that in society in general, marriages kind of go either way too. So it seems to me that doesn't really tell us anything.
So it doesn't mean anything, like really. It's kind of like you could take that shared grief and bond because of the shared grief, or you could grow apart because of the shared grief.
It depends what you do with it, like anything. Right?
It's a trigger that causes a change, whether it's a good change or a bad change. It's definitely something that triggers a change.
And it could be like any other hardship in a marriage, like bankruptcy or you know, a handicapped child, disabled
or like
child.
being trapped in the home due to corona.
Yeah.
Bring out the good or the bad, whichever was there to begin with.
Yeah.
You know, Becky, I think I've had the same experience, and I think it might have been after miscarriage, like, I don't know, 28 years ago or something. But when you were talking about that, I was like, you know, I've been there. And I remember eventually thinking the same thing. What am I doing here? We're just sitting here every month or week or whatever it was, talking about how miserable we are. This isn't helping.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, that doesn't help. So there's a hint that Colleen had been unfaithful to her husband, but they went on to have a closer relationship where they tell each other everything. Do you think that's realistic?
I do.
Yeah.
I think that rings true. Again, it's a trigger, something, you know, usually when there's an affair, there's more than one person to blame. Not always, but usually there's some problems beforehand. And so if the person is open enough and can get past the betrayal, I can see where certain couples could get closer. Because communication would be better, and I could see that happening. I felt it rang true.
Anybody else? So when Faith first realized that Ismay was having visions, she looked for explanations. And some of the possibilities she came up with were psychic phenomena, mass hysteria, a natural explanation like opium. I don't remember that, Becky. Did she?
Yeah, yeah. They were. She read some articles about how some police officers hallucinated after taking this woman in, and it turned out that they had touched her opium patches on her arm.
Mhm.
Nice.
I didn't remember that part. Or psychological, spiritual, religious. So for any of the readers, if you had been in this position, your kid tells you they're seeing things like a black cat with blue eyes that doesn't exist, what would your explanation have been, and why?
Well, I thought the one term that she used, mythomania, at least that's self-descriptive. And I'm wondering, is that an actual diagnosis? And if so, how did you find out about that? Did you check on different conditions?
Yeah, like, so why would a child be lying, basically? So that's what I looked up, you know, and found it on whatever, Psychology Today or some article, you know. But yeah, mythomania, or I think there were two words for it, but they meant the same thing. But it's basically like a child acting out because of other issues in their life. And so that's what Gretchen, the pediatrician, is hinting at, you know, that you've had this stillbirth in the family and it affects everybody, the child too. And so the child could be lying because of this trauma in the life.
Or was she lying because she just wanted attention?
Or that too. Yeah. Yeah. I think both of those fall under mythomania or whatever it was called.
So Lisa, what's your opinion? What would you have thought?
You know, we have a godchild who had cancer. She was diagnosed at 6 months.
Mhm.
And she spent her first 2 years in the hospital. And she would, when she came home, she started to have visions that were very vivid, very detailed, and, you know, sent shivers down our spines many times.
Good or bad?
I think she, you know, she seemed to see angels. She said she saw Jesus several times. She felt very, when she was describing it, felt very comfortable with these beings around her and as part of her life. So, you know, were they real? Was it just that she had a really creative imagination? Was she, you know, what was happening? We don't know. She doesn't have them anymore. But she's 5 years healthy, 5 years recovered, thank God.
Okay.
And so I don't know.
How old was she when she was having the visions?
So she was probably 3, 4 years old.
Is she like 7 now?
Yes. Yep. She's in 1st grade. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, at the time, we talked with their parents about it, and we, you know, we had supper and a glass of wine, and we were discussing, you know, what could this all mean? In the end, you know, with the cancer diagnosis and everything, they were both still working, and they have another child, and just trying to juggle it all. And they were just busy and overwhelmed, and also grieving with the cancer diagnosis, struggling with their own relationship. It was definitely a trigger that caused some stress in the home. Who knows? Eventually she just stopped having them, and every once in a while we refer back and talk about what that might have meant and if it was real or not, but that's about all. It just kind of, life carried us away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, and when I was researching this, like some of the things that Faith is Googling and researching, that was me actually Googling and researching those things. And they did say that like children some of the psychic places say that children are more psychically open, and you could either train that to stay psychic, or you could, not.
What did you conclude about what your daughter saw?
Oh, that night with the coyotes?
Yeah. Don't want to say.
Well, my daughter actually, she was the one saying there isn't anything out there, but several of the girls insisted they saw coyotes.
Okay.
I actually thought that God was giving me some type of a hint about the bank hacking. What for? I have no idea. So maybe those girls saw some kind of thing. But then, like Lance says to Faith, you got a story idea dropped in your lap, run with it.
Right.
That's what I did.
Well, it's interesting because, we've had, I could probably give you many examples, but we do have one where there was hearing voices and seeing things, and our first explanation, the doctors obviously, was schizophrenia. And it turned out that the particular child was just going into the dream state very, very early. And and once they asked the right questions, they were just like, whew, no, you're okay. It's not schizophrenia. It's just that some people are very, very early on the curve after starting the dream stage. But we've had another one where at least twice now, one or the other of my kids has looked out the back in the middle of the night, and we have this deck with like a 6-foot fence and then the rest of the yard, and half the yard is completely bathed in a blue light. And we've discussed it numerous times, like, what is this? And in all my research, people have suggested various things. Well, was there some kind of plane or helicopter? Well, it was just a solid line where the blue light ended. And the best we can come up with, there is no logical explanation. And blue supposedly, represents benevolence. And then one of my sons has a friend who all his life has seen and experienced things. And I was very happy when one of my kids asked him, well, what do you feel in this house? Because sometimes we're like, oh man, this house has so many problems, it's cursed. And his friend said, no, this is a house full of love. And I was so happy. And I thought, you know what, I think that blue light in the back, to me, that's what it was. And maybe I'll never know. But at the end, I think sometimes it's the meaning you give to it. Yeah. And so in this case, I have no doubt that she was right, that Ismay's visions were legitimate. But I think sometimes you'll never know.
Yeah. So did other people see the blue light, or just the one child?
There were 2 separate kids on 2 separate occasions. And I think that on one of those occasions, they called me down. I think it was my daughter that time. Both times were because the dog started barking in the middle of the night. So this was at 2 in the morning, And I think on one of those occasions, because I have a vision in my head, I think I saw it too. And it was distinctly blue. I mean, it was like the blue on Lisa's shirt. And it was just this blue glow covering half the yard and this solid line where it stopped right there. But come to think of it, I had another experience with the shadow on my ceiling. And that I looked into too, and I have absolutely no doubt other people have experienced that. You can look it up on online. But I have no doubt that was also sort of, called spiritual or psychological. But they say that happens when someone is incredibly angry with you, and someone was that particular day.
Never heard of that. Wow, that's weird.
I'll have to tell you about that another time. But I guess the point is, I think just like what we talked about earlier, probably these experiences are a little more common than many people want to admit. So if anyone else has had these experiences, feel free to jump in.
Well, I have a lot of experiences, but I don't want to bore you because I've got a lot of them, but it's part of my business, so,
I was actually thinking specifically of you, Chris. I was thinking if anybody in this group experiences, I
Yeah,
bet.
lots and lots of them actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, but anyway, so many of those things that we have to
Yeah.
deal with. You know, in the ministry, of course, we deal with a lot of things like that and things that come
Right.
across. And
Yeah.
understanding the difference between the spiritual and the psychological and the mental and the emotional is always a
So-
very interesting fine line, you know, and understanding those.
And-
But
And
yeah,
that
there's a lot
brings
of those things that have gone on through the years that are very interesting. So, but
a
anyway, I won't
very
bore you with too many
interesting
stories.
question. But
Both
how
things that you
often-
feel and sense, things that you see,
right.
things, you know, the whole range, the whole gamut, you know,
Yeah.
floating visual things,
Mhm.
vocal, smells,
Mhm.
physical,
Mhm.
actually being paralyzed, hit, all kinds, the whole range.
Oh
And
yeah,
how
well,
often-
Lois, you and Gunter were slain in the spirit, right?
Right?
Yeah, so they've had experiences too.
Yeah.
Chris, so my Lois and Gunter are world travelers, so they're
Oh, yeah.
interested in all parts of the world. So tell them where you work out of.
Yeah. Oh, hi guys. Yeah, I now work in Central Asia area, the Caucasus. I'm based out of Minneapolis, but I've lived in Hong Kong, Turkey, Azerbaijan, and I work into the Central Asian regions there through Turkey, Georgia, Azerbaijan, that area.
Okay.
And I've lived in that area, worked there for the last 30 plus years or so. So that's kind of where I work. I'm based out of Minneapolis now and travel quite a lot around the world to different places for work and things. So
A few years
ministry,
ago, we went to
a lot of
Uzbekistan.
years. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, typically my experience are of the negative kind, Becky, rather than being slain in the spirit. Those are the pleasant ones. I'm talking about doing battle usually. So
Yeah.
my wife's a seer and I'm a sensor, if that makes any
Okay.
sense to you. My wife sees
Yeah.
things. We used to work in Hong Kong with heroin addicts and triad members, and they were into some pretty heavy duty stuff before they came to the Lord. So we had to deal with some quite interesting things there. She used to see things and I used to feel them. That's
Okay.
kind of how we work, generally,
Yeah.
my wife and I.
Huh.
Azerbaijan, not so much, but Turkey, very intense spiritual warfare in Turkey, very intense. That's a very heavy duty place. It certainly was in the 90s anyway, late 80s, early 90s. So that's where some of my heavier experiences were. So, but anyway, don't want to
curious
give you
how-
nightmares before you go to bed.
How do you determine when things were spiritual versus psychological versus too many drugs they took, or?
Well, typically they were in the midst of very extreme spiritual things that we were doing. So for example, when I was leading worship for a whole intensive intercession day, I was, for example, mock heart attacked. I was, for example, I was crushed. I had the feeling of being crushed in my bed. Came out of my bed and actually saw a free floating kind of manifestation of the demonic, which actually hit me in the chest and kind of physically manifested in an illness after that for a while, which had to be prayed out. A whole bunch of things that were really hard. I was pressed down into my bed and couldn't speak, couldn't move, and had to kind of pray in my head to be released from that. There's a whole bunch of things that were really quite hard and difficult. On the positive side, you know, just seeking the Lord for things. I remember Joey telling me about when we were in Azerbaijan, she had dreams and visions of just as we were praying, and, you know, we were church planting. This is the Muslim world, so church planting in the Muslim world. And just how she felt very menaced by things and just had the vision of two angels coming up alongside her, grasping her under her arms and carrying her into the house, because she felt the sense of the menace of the place and just how the Lord was giving her that sense that she was going to be cared for and looked after. And so that we were in a provincial town there of Azerbaijan at the time. So there's a lot of things like that, but you know, I forget more than I remember half the time. You know, there's a lot of things that happen because it's just part of the warp and weft of the things we did at that time, you know, because it was a very difficult time. You know, there was, the country was very much, I mean, talk about lockdown, we had curfew then in the early days and tanks in the streets and things like that. So it was a little bit hairy in the early years of Azerbaijan. It's completely different now, but then it was a little difficult.
Were you living there full time?
Oh yeah, we were there for 8 years. Yeah,
For
this
8
last
years?
18 years when I've traveled around, that was a different time.
Okay.
Completely different. Yeah, we church planted actually in country then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
We
I
worked in
think,
the psychiatric hospital, children's home in a provincial town. Then I moved back into the capital and worked for 3 years there in a different capacity.
Well,
Rebecca,
think
I'm
they
gonna
look
have
for
to
me.
leave. This is Linda.
okay. Thank
But
you,
I'm gonna-
Linda.
Thank you, and I'll definitely
Yeah.
be reading your book and
Okay.
It's a good read.
get in touch with you and Connie
Yeah.
as well. So
Okay. You
you.
have a great
enjoy the
night.
rest of your evening. Thank you. This was enjoyable.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
nice to
Bye
meet
now.
you.
Nice to meet you all.
Come back next week.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah.
For Lisa's book next week.
Yeah, Lisa's book. It's a good one.
Yeah, and we should give a promo for those. So I do have a couple more questions. What was your reaction to the confrontation between Faith and Lance when he returns from his trip and she confronts him with what she knows? And did she do it the right way, or what mistakes did she make? Anyone? Bueller? So we don't know and we don't care. Is that the
No,
answer?
I think asking the question is more about how did Becky write it? How I think I'd rather answer that question. I think maybe Laura,
Okay.
and how she set it up and
Mhm.
kind of prepared us for the denouement rather than that. I like the way that Becky did it. I mean, I think obviously it was one of those kind of set up scenarios, where we're kind of being led down a path. Whether we would have done it that way or not, I don't know, but we were being led well down the path, I think, for the setup. And I think that
Well,
worked very well.
I think an author always had that at that point in the story, the author always has to make the character do the thing that you don't think she should do, right? Like,
Mhm.
so she gets all mad at Lance just when they were this close to making up. And then he packs his bags and she doesn't even go out and say, no, don't pack your bags and go. She just lets him go. And then it's like, oh, my marriage is over. So I think that's the point. The author does that on purpose to get the reader to say, don't do that, Faith, you're being so stupid. So that hopefully that works.
I have a question on the Lance being an attorney, and then the one he has the affair with is also an attorney, and the back and forth between them using some of the legal language that they would use in court against each other. And I'm wondering, when you started writing the book, did you have all the plot? Did you know you were going to have two attorneys at the end doing this? Or is that something that came along as you worked on writing the book?
Yeah, I think I knew that pretty early on. But I managed to make Katrina a lot worse during the writing of it. And especially the part where she steals his phone and pretends like he's butt dialed her. That was kind of a later addition, which I think was just kind of fun. So I worked on making her a lot worse. I was at first just like, well, yeah, it's just a natural office affair kind of thing. But then I kind of made her a little bit psycho.
Okay.
So literature is full of characters who are stuck in the past, even keep a room untouched after a loved one's death, like Miss Havisham of Great Expectations. Faith left this empty nursery set up for over a year. How common do you think that is? Both Jen and Wanda offered to help Faith pack up or sell these things. So do you think it was right for them to offer to bring this up? And then how common do you think it is to do that?
I had a nephew that died in a tragic farm accident at the age of, he was 6 when he passed away.
How old?
And
6.
my aunt and uncle kept that room exactly as it was the day he died for years. In fact, it's been a while since I've been to the farm. I don't know if they still have it like that.
Wow.
But my cousin had drawn some things on a chalkboard. They had a chalkboard in their basement, and he drew some things. And my brother and I, were out on the farm visiting, and I wanted to draw on the chalkboard, and I grabbed some chalk and I was gonna draw on it,
Wow.
and I was quickly scolded and sent away. That wasn't something to be touched. So I always thought it was very odd. I mean, they wouldn't even walk into his room, much less touch anything. It was very strange, but yet I felt it was very strange, and yet they were so grief-stricken, they just couldn't do it and didn't want somebody else to do it. For me, my coping is, like we've had the exchange students, and the day that we have to say goodbye, I say goodbye, and then with tears in my eyes, I go and I clean their room top to bottom and rearrange the furniture and take everything out of the drawers and put everything away. Like I need to move
Wow.
on with it. So I think everybody deals with that grief in very different ways.
Well, I do know someone who, when her only son left home, I'm told she never changed the room. Whereas I, on the other hand, I have no
A much
choice.
bigger house, wouldn't you?
Right, when a kid leaves home, the next youngest nearly barrels me over, going, "Is he gone yet? Can I have his room?" The stuff is out the door, it's out the window, it's in storage. I'm like, not keeping that one as a shrine.
Get out of here.
There is no danger I will ever keep a shrine to a child.
Not gonna happen.
Rooms are a high premium here.
I guess I can understand that sense of, if we keep the room, we keep the memory, we
Yeah.
keep the love alive. I get it, particularly if you only had one. I
Yeah.
can understand that. I mean, I'm like Lisa. For me, it would be like, okay, that's gone now. Now we move on.
Sorry, I meant to move my clock. This is my musical clock.
Beautiful, Laura.
It's beautiful, and lately I'm annoyed with it more than, beautified by it. We'll shut up in a minute.
That's okay. But yeah, I can understand how that would happen and how people would feel like that. But I think it goes very much with the person, doesn't it? So I think it does happen. Definitely, like Lisa said, it wouldn't happen with me or you, but it certainly does happen with some people. So it's not fanciful.
I can totally understand how it happens, and I don't think it's unrealistic at all. I would suspect that a great many people, if they have the luxury of being able to just leave that room, I suspect probably it's not that uncommon.
And I think the longer you hesitate, like in the moment, I can see her being so filled with grief that she just can't bear to go in there and start sorting through and putting things away. And then a day goes by, a week goes by, a month goes by, and the harder it gets, the longer it's been this shrine kind of to this memory. And so I definitely understand that.
So before we wrap up, does anybody have questions for Becky or any comments about the book?
So are we going to see a sequel then, Becky? Did they make it? Did another child come? Will another
Yeah.
femme fatale appear?
No, I don't think so.
Another near affair.
I think they're in a good place, and we can just imagine that they
Okay.
had two more kids because they have the vision of the 3 baby ducklings going up the walk.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so that's kind of
Audacious.
the hint. They go on to have two more kids.
So
Yeah.
no faith restored then.
No, Faith restored. She's restored at the end of this book
There
already.
you go. Okay.
What was your specific purpose in writing the book, Becky?
Well, it really was to flesh out this idea of God speaking to us through these visions. That's what I wanted to get at. So I think it did it in a kind of a different way than I might have thought if I just said I'm going to write a book about that. it ended up having a good conflict, and that part seems like the sub thread, you know, which is probably the right way to have approached it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it worked well. So any last minute comments before we talk about the next couple of weeks?
I think it was a great job. I love the book, and it brought a lot of conversation, not only through the writers group, but then in reading it and coming home every week and talking about it. It was, I think I can understand why it was award winning.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for everyone. I mean, you guys all helped me polish it. And Gunter actually helped me with the German in there. There's the third chapter, I think, where they go on Lake Minnetonka, and they have a au pair who's from Germany. And so the few phrases of German in there, Gunter checked for me. So everybody here has contributed to that book. So thank you so much.
So Lisa, as long as you're here, I don't need to give an intro to your book. Lisa's book is called Without Words. That's what we will be reading this week and talking about next week. So Lisa, why don't you tell them about your book?
So it's, I wanted to write a book after reading the little snippets from the genealogies from my family. And, you know, in those genealogies, you get a little taste of what life was like for those people, but it's usually birth, death, reason for death, babies born, where they lived. You don't get a real sense of who they were. In these genealogies, there were just some little hints of stories. For example, one of the genealogies talked about one of my husband's relatives was hit by a train in a snowstorm and was killed. And then later, I think it was the next year or 2 years later, the brother was killed in the snowstorm by the train. And then the next year, the brother's son died of grief. And, you know, it was just kind of, it wasn't put in that order. It was like, okay, this family and this family. And when I matched that up, wow, that's crazy. And it appears they died by the same railroad track. So I just felt like there's so much more to that story than is depicted in this genealogy. And so what I did then is I took those little snippets of storylines and I created a story around that. And I did it using a character named Shadow, who is mute and doesn't talk, and her role is just to listen. And she's writing these stories down of the people that she's met in her life.
And it's set in what part? North Dakota, right?
South Dakota.
South Dakota. Okay.
Yeah. That's a huge faux pas. If you're from North or South Dakota, you would never make that mistake.
Sorry.
People do
They're
it
all
all
the
the
same.
time.
They're all Dakotas, right?
Was.
People do it all the time. And at my old employer, we hired a doctor from South Dakota, and my boss said something about North Dakota, and I was there, and I'm sorry, but he, you know, I've worked here 10 years and he just can't figure out the difference. And the doctor was like, yeah, I understand. My boss is like, it really is a thing, isn't it? Yeah, it really is a thing.
So that is April 13th. On April 20th, it's my book, Bluebells of Scotland, which is about an arrogant modern musician who finds himself trapped in medieval Scotland with none of his power and fame. And I believe Joe just finished reading that. Chris?
Yep.
Yeah, she just...
Halfway through. Well, she's more than halfway through, actually.
Oh, okay, okay. So that...
You know, I've never read it, Laura. I've never read the book.
I haven't
so
either,
I'm
but I
looking
have
forward
to read it now. I've got 2 weeks to read it.
Now you're obligated.
Challenge is on.
I have copies at home. I gave a presentation for 200 and the organizer assured me they all buy books. So I bought like 200 copies of every one of my books.
Oh,
Most of them didn't. And on talking to her more later, I realized I think that it's that old kind of cliche. People are more likely to buy nonfiction and get fiction from the library. So I have plenty of copies if you two want some.
you'd rather have us do that than get it on Amazon, huh?
You know what? Either way works for me.
Okay.
But it's been a really fun book to write a series because it's very thoroughly researched with the history of the time of Robert the Bruce, which was just a bit after William Wallace of Braveheart, and a lot of fascinating historical stories. And because I play both trombone and harp like the two main characters, that was fun to work in. And because I'm totally not an obnoxious, arrogant womanizer like Sean, it was fun to, you know, have this persona that's so totally not me. And then coming up April 27th, we have The Smart Kid by Bob Miller. And that's sort of an evil corporation with these dastardly deeds, and they've planted these genetically engineered people. And it's about this pair of twins in which all of a sudden, you know, about age 13 or so, one of them keeps aging and becoming an adult and the other never gets older. And so it's all about how these agents kind of zero in on him and they're looking for these people, you know, because I won't get into it too much, don't want to give spoilers, but it's a really neat story about these two brothers and how they cope with this situation that's been foisted on them. And then May 4th, we have a book called The Feet Say Run. And that is written by Dan Blum, who lives out on the East Coast. And it's about an old man, about 85 years old, named Hans Jaeger. And he's gone out on this pleasure cruise on a yacht with his rich neighbor, and they encounter a storm and they crash on a desert island. And so every chapter alternates. One chapter is how these 6 survivors are reforming society. And then every other chapter in between were taken from Hans Jaeger at the age of about 13 in pre-war Germany, or about 1939, I think it starts. And we go through his life in Nazi Germany and how he had this Jewish girlfriend and how it's a fascinating story, how he got pressured into being in the German army, about the post-war years, about it's his life in America. He and his girlfriend, who later becomes his wife in post-war Germany, decide they want to be resettled to Iowa because they heard it had beautiful mountains like the Alps. So it's this amazing story because it's literary fiction. You know, it's very historical, it's very profound, it's very poignant, and it's very funny all at the same time. You know, you go through these scenes of Hans shooting at this duck, and, you know, later his son is so angry at him because he was fighting with the Nazis, and yet, you know, this was a 17-year-old kid who didn't know what he was doing and was being propagandized, and he never shot anything but a duck. So, you know, it's a really beautiful story. I think, like what I was saying about yours, Becky, that you can't just go, they're all good and they're all bad. You have to look at what people were really in the middle of, what they were.
I think Gunter has read that. Did you read it too, Lois?
You read it?
I didn't because it's here and I couldn't, and we left it here. So now that we're back, I just said to Gunter, now I want to read that
I
next.
read it, yeah.
But we'd like to be part of the club for that meeting if you could invite us.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
I'm excited that you have that. And by the way, that book is under production for a movie. They're trying to get us, Dan has actually written a screenplay. So that's kind of been in the works for 3 years, and they're struggling to find funding. And it's just, I think it's the best book in the world because it's so human and it gets to the heart of things that people need to know these days, like just shut up and listen, you know, and don't be so quick to judge. But it's a really well told story. Dan is a brilliant writer. He's such a good writer. I can't say enough about what a good writer he is.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get that one too.
Yeah, I know Clinton really loved it. Yeah,
You liked it?
he liked it a lot. And the fact is, I would have read it right away, except that we went back, it was last October, and we went back to San Diego for the winter. But now we're back here where the book is, so that's going to be my next.
Fantastic.
Now you can read it.
Yeah.
So, and we've got a couple books beyond that, but I just was scribbling notes while the rest of you were talking. And of course, the events will all be put up in the Gabriel Sworn Facebook page. I think most of them are already, possibly all of them. And then start planning for a summer session, especially, you know, once we see what kind of response we're getting.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm really excited about yours, Lisa.
Yeah, I am too. I am too.
I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to that. So everyone start promoting that.
Yeah. It's too bad we didn't have any just responses off of Facebook for this, but
Well, my son said that he was coming, my 23-year-old Marine. And I texted him, seriously, you're really going to read this book about it? He's like, no.
no. Oh, well, yeah, there were some interesteds. I think there were like 20 interesteds, right?
Yeah. And
Right.
part of the reason people do that is because when they say they're interested, it actually helps promote it in the algorithm, so other people are more likely to see it.
Oh,
A lot of people will say they're interested just to kind of try and help you get some visibility.
oh, that's nice.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know if my son meant to say he was interested or if he intended to say going so that other people would go, oh, wow, lots of people are going, I should go too. But I was thinking, this just is not like a
Not his kind of book.
book. So, but
I wasn't able to do anything with the Facebook. I can't do anything with Gabriel Sworn Facebook page.
and you were never able to accept my invitation, were you?
Mm-mm. It never came through.
And Bob had no problem at all.
It's so strange.
Yeah.
I thought it was the internet connection because it was really slow where we were, but now we're with my brother in South Dakota, and
Mhm.
and I tried today and there's just nothing.
Still no. I mean, I can try resending it, but I did set up your event for you.
I did see that.
Security
Thank you.
settings, Lisa.
So
Is it your privacy settings, Lisa?
maybe.
On your Facebook, I would check that. See if see if you've got some privacy settings that precludes it.
Okay, Chris. That's a good thought. Yeah, I'll check that.
Might be.
Okay. Well, I will write up a summary and we'll post it various places and see if we can get some people for next week too.
We,
All
Sounds great.
I totally
All right.
forgot about recording. Are we recording?
no, you are
We
recording.
We are.
Oh, we are recording.
Recording.
Okay, well,
Yes, you're
do you guys mind being on the recording?
You're
Okay. Too late to ask Connie and Linda, but Linda's face didn't show, so
Yeah.
I don't think she'll mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. it's-
Okay, then I'm
That's
going to stop the recording because we should have edited out all this. Okay.